They never saw her as part of the family, just a shadow in the house. To them, she was a useless wife, the girl with no value, no importance, no voice. But life has a way of revealing the truth, and soon, the same family that mocked her would discover that the woman they ignored was the very reason they still had a future. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the channel. If you haven't already, please do well to hit that subscribe button and let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. They never saw her as part of the family, just a shadow in the corner of the house. Her name was Amara. From the first day she walked into her husband's home, she learned quickly that respect was something they would never give her, not because she did anything wrong, but because they believed she had nothing to offer. No good family background, no status, no connection. Just a quiet girl with soft hands and a calm voice. Her husband, Daniel, had married her against his mother's wishes. From that moment, the family made it their mission to remind Amara that she did not belong. They never shouted at her. They didn't need to. Their silence was worse. Breakfast? She served it. Family meetings? She wasn't invited. Even in her own marriage, she was treated like a visitor. Sometimes, when she placed food on the table, they would continue talking as if she didn't exist, like a housemaid walking past. And Daniel, instead of protecting her, he pretended not to notice. He didn't insult her, but he didn't defend her either. He was not cruel, just weak. And weakness can wound deeper than anger. One evening, as they all sat in the living room entertaining visitors, her mother-in-law laughed and said loudly, "In this house, every woman has contributed something important. Some brought businesses, some brought land, some brought connections, but others," she paused and looked directly at Amara, "well, others brought nothing." The room laughed softly. Amara didn't speak. She just lowered her eyes and smiled gently. But that smile wasn't weakness. It was restraint, because unknown to them, she was not the person they believed she was. Long before she ever became the invisible wife, Amara had lived a different kind of life, a life no one in this household had taken the time to ask about, a life she intentionally kept hidden. She had her reasons. Some people carry dignity quietly. Some people don't need to prove anything. Until the right time, that night, as she lay beside her husband, Daniel spoke without looking at her. "Just try to understand my family. They mean well. If you just try harder to fit in." She turned slowly and looked at him. "So I should keep earning respect I already deserve?" He had no answer. Silence filled the room like cold air. Amara wasn't angry. She was waiting, because life always brings a moment, one sharp turning point, where truth and pretense finally separate, and hers was coming. Soon, this same family that treated her like a shadow would discover that the person they ignored was the very person their future depended on. The day of their awakening was closer than they could ever imagine. The next few weeks made it even clearer. In that house, Amar was present, but never included. When relatives came visiting, the conversations flowed freely until she entered the room. Then silence would fall like a curtain, and they would switch topics, as if her ears were not worthy of certain information. They didn't see her as a wife, just an accessory, something Daniel picked up without their approval. On Sundays after church, the family would discuss business ideas at the dining table. But when Amara tried to contribute once, her sister-in-law laughed. "Please, let people who understand money talk. You can help in the kitchen." The room chuckled. Amara stood there quietly for a moment, then nodded and walked away. Not because she agreed with them, but because she understood something they didn't. Loud people are not always powerful. Sometimes they are only loud because they fear silence. A subtle warning they missed. One afternoon, a visitor came, an elderly man, dressed simply but with quiet confidence. He came to see Daniel's father about a business matter. The family greeted him with respect, offering drinks and fruit. But when he saw Amara walking past, his eyes widened with recognition. "Is this your daughter-in-law?" he asked. The family looked surprised. Daniel's mother forced a polite smile. "Yes," she replied. The old man rose immediately and greeted Amara with both hands, warmly. "Ah, it is you. I have not seen you in years. I didn't even know you were married now. I hope life has been kind to you." The entire room fell silent. No one had ever seen anyone respect her like that before. Daniel's sister whispered under her breath, "Who exactly knows her like this?" Before Mara could answer, her mother-in-law quickly interrupted the conversation with a forced laugh, trying to shift attention. "Ah, sir, please don't mind her. She is just quiet. She doesn't really do much." The old man looked again at Amara, a long, knowing look, and then smiled softly. "Sometimes the quiet ones are the ones holding the Real foundation." He said it slowly, like a sentence carrying weight, but the family dismissed it. They thought it was just an old man being poetic. They didn't know that what he said was not a compliment, but a prophecy, a heart growing tired. That night, Amara sat on the balcony alone. She looked over the city lights and took a deep breath. She wasn't crying. She wasn't breaking. She was observing. She turned a simple gold ring slowly between her fingers, something she always did when she was thinking deeply. A ring no one in that house ever asked about. A ring that was not for decoration, but identity. She whispered quietly to herself. Not yet, but soon. Because she knew something the rest of them did not. The storm that would expose everyone, loyalty, pride, character, was on its way. And when it came, the same voices that mocked her would fall silent, not out of fear, out of realization. Episode 2, End. If you want to continue, I will now take the story into Episode 3, where the disrespect reaches a breaking point. The family faces a crisis. Seeds of her hidden capability begin to show. The turning point came quietly, the way most storms do, with no warning. Daniel's family ran a medium-sized company that had been passed down for 2 generations. It wasn't the biggest in the city, but it held respect. Their pride rested heavily on it. It was proof that they were important. One Thursday afternoon, everything changed. The family received a notice. A major investor was pulling out of their partnership. At first, they treated it like a small inconvenience. "He will come back," they said. But the investor didn't reconsider. Within a week, customers began pulling out too. Suppliers stopped giving them goods on credit. Meetings became tense. The board grew restless. The first person the family blamed, not the directors, not the managers, not their poor decisions. They blamed Daniel's wife. Ever since this girl entered this family, nothing has been the same. His mother hissed one evening. They began to call her a bad omen, as if she were a curse that brought misfortune. The disrespect peaks. One afternoon, during a heated family discussion, Amara was clearing the dining table when Daniel's sister slammed a file on the table and said loudly, "If Daniel had married a woman with a useful background, we would not be in this position right now. A wife is supposed to bring something to the family, not sit here like decoration." Everyone murmured in agreement. Daniel said nothing. That silence hurt more than any insult. Not long after, another blow came. The company was now at risk of being taken over if they couldn't pay their debts within a short deadline. Meetings grew desperate. Phone calls turned into arguments. The house became tense, like living inside a pressure cooker. And yet, not one person thought to ask Amara for help. Not one person believed she could possibly know anything. She was just the quiet wife, the nobody. But something shifts that evening after dinner. As everyone worried aloud in the living room, Amara stood washing dishes in the kitchen. She could hear everything, the fear, the panic, the confusion. She paused with her hands still in the soapy water and whispered, "This is it. The moment is getting close." She dried her hands slowly and walked past the living room doorway. No one noticed her. But then, the old visitor from episode 2 came back. He entered, greeted everyone politely, and took a seat. After a few minutes of listening to their worries, he said calmly, "Perhaps the solution is already inside your home. You are just refusing to see it." They looked at him in confusion. The mother-in-law frowned. "What do you mean?" He simply glanced toward the kitchen, where Amara had just walked past, and then looked back at them. They still didn't understand. He sighed softly, then said something that would soon come to pass. The one you overlook today may be the only reason your family still stands tomorrow. Still, they dismissed his warning, because pride blinds before it destroys, and destruction was no longer a rumor. It had already started. The crisis grew worse. Suppliers stopped picking their calls. Banks started demanding repayment. The company accountant resigned quietly. He didn't want to be part of the collapse. The family went from speaking confidently to speaking in whispers, from "we will fix this" to "what are we going to do?" From arrogance to fear. They started holding emergency meetings almost every night. Charts, papers, loan requests scattered everywhere. But the more they tried, the deeper they sank. Still, no one asked Amara anything. In their eyes, she was still irrelevant. The first sign, one evening, the tension reached a breaking point. Daniel's mother was pacing the living room angrily. "If we don't find a solution in the next 2 weeks, the company will be seized." Daniel rubbed his forehead in frustration. "No investor wants to join us. They said our financials look unstable." Amara walked past silently with a tray of tea until she heard the last sentence. She paused, not speaking, just listening. Daniel's sister snapped. "At this point, we need a miracle or someone who actually understands business." Then she turned deliberately toward Amara, smirking, which means she cannot help. But something unexpected happened. The elderly visitor, who had been sitting quietly, spoke again. "Maybe you should ask her what she knows before you dismiss her." The family looked at him in disbelief. Daniel's mother laughed out loud. "Ask her what? How to cook more soup. She can't even speak in meetings." The man looked at her, not angrily, just deeply. Sometimes the strongest person in the room is the one you think has nothing. He turned to Amara gently. "My dear, if this were your company, what would you do differently?" The room went dead silent. It was the first time anyone had ever asked her an intelligent question in that house. Amara didn't rush. She set the tray down slowly, then turned to face them. Her voice was calm, steady. "I would not go looking for new investors first. I would fix the foundation before inviting anyone to enter." The family stared. They didn't understand. She continued, "No serious investor joins a leaking ship, not because they fear loss, but because they fear carelessness. Before asking for help from outside, you must prove you can manage what is inside." Daniel blinked. His sister frowned. His mother scoffed. But the old man smiled knowingly. For the first time, Amara spoke like someone who was not a housewife, but a strategist. Daniel's mother waved dismissively. "Please, don't confuse inspirational talk with real business. This is beyond her level." The moment passed, and Amara returned to the kitchen as if nothing happened. But one person noticed something. Daniel. For the first time, he looked at her differently. Not as a quiet wife, but as someone who might know more than she ever revealed. Something flickered in his expression, a tiny spark of curiosity. It was small, but it meant a shift had begun. The family still didn't know it, but the person they had treated like the weakest link was quietly becoming the only bridge left. The deadline for repayment was approaching fast. Meetings turned frantic. Voices got louder. Accusations started flying. They blamed the economy. They blamed competition. They blamed bad luck. But never once did they blame their own decisions. One night, the family gathered again in the living room. Papers were scattered everywhere. Phones kept ringing, not with opportunities, but with debt reminders. The accountant's replacement came with worse news. "If we don't secure funds by next week, the bank will begin asset seizure." Silence dropped over the room like heavy stone. Daniel's mother clenched her fist. "We need a major investor now." The sister snapped. "We can't find one. Nobody is answering us." Everyone was speaking, but no one was thinking. And then came the biggest shock of all. The board threatened to vote Daniel out as managing director if he failed to fix things. They wanted someone else, someone with stronger capacity, to take control of the company. For the first time, Daniel truly felt fear. He sat down slowly, his hands trembling. This wasn't just about business anymore. It was about respect, legacy, his position as the son of the house. Meanwhile, Amara was in the hallway, not intentionally eavesdropping, just passing by. When she overheard everything, a part of her wanted to walk away again. But something in her shifted. For months, she had remained silent out of wisdom, not weakness. She observed, learned their patterns, and waited. But now, she saw something different in Daniel. Not arrogance, but helplessness. She walked to the balcony later that night, where Daniel sat alone, staring at his phone. For the first time, she sat beside him. He didn't speak at first. Then, with a tired voice, he said, "Everything is falling apart, and I don't know how to save it." She turned and looked at him. Not with anger, not with pride, but calm certainty. Maybe the solution is not outside. Maybe it has been in front of you all along. He looked at her slowly. A quiet moment passed. "Amara," he said, struggled with the words, "is there something I don't know about you?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she asked a question, soft but strong. "If I had the ability to help, would you actually listen to me, or would your pride still speak louder than your ears?" Daniel froze, because for the first time ever, he realized she was not asking for validation. She was testing his readiness. He swallowed. "If you can help us, I will listen." She studied his face for a moment, searching for sincerity. Then she nodded gently. "When you are ready to hear the truth, come to me privately, not as a husband demanding respect, but as a man seeking counsel." Daniel stared at her, stunned. This wasn't the voice of a helpless wife. This was the voice of someone who had tasted leadership before. Someone who was not ordinary. But while Daniel began to see a glimpse of who she truly was, the rest of his family still believed she was nothing. They had no idea how quickly their world was about to reverse. The pressure in the household grew like a storm cloud that refused a break. Every phone call brought more bad news. Suppliers were threatening lawsuits. Staff were resigning quietly, and competitors had already started circling like vultures. Fear turned into frustration, and frustration turned into cruelty. Since they couldn't control the situation, they tried to control Amara, the only person they still felt superior to. The breaking point. One afternoon, the family gathered to discuss a final desperate plan, selling part of the company to salvage the rest. Daniel hesitated. He didn't want to become the son who lost a family legacy. His mother snapped at him. "If you had married a woman with connections, this wouldn't be happening." The sister-in-law added, "Some wives bring sponsors, hers bring silence." That day, a visiting relative, a distant aunt, was present. No one told her anything about Amara. They didn't even introduce her. But after observing the tension, she asked innocently, "This young woman, what role does she play in the family business?" Before Daniel could speak, his mother answered, "None. She doesn't know anything about business. She's just here." Just here. A statement sharper than a slap. The aunt turned to Amara kindly. "My dear, is that true?" Amara opened her mouth to reply. But before she could speak, the sister-in-law cut in sharply. "Please don't embarrass her. Talking about business is above her level." The room laughed softly. This time, Amara didn't lower her eyes. She looked up, slowly, directly at the sister-in-law. Her voice was calm, but firm. "What you call above my level is actually below my experience." The room froze. Her tone wasn't angry. It was controlled. The kind of control that comes from someone who doesn't need to prove anything, because she knows who she is. But instead of realizing their mistake, Daniel's mother stood up aggressively. "Experience? Where? In this house you have contributed nothing. Not a single contract, not a single investor, not a single opportunity. You have been eating from a table you did not build." Daniel opened his mouth slightly, as if wanting to speak, but fear held him silent. And then the mother-in-law delivered the harshest blow. "Sometimes I wonder if my son married you out of pity, because certainly there was nothing else you offered." There was a sharp stillness after that. Even the aunt looked shocked. Daniel lowered his head. Amara's response. Amara stood very slowly, not rushed, not shaken. She didn't look angry. She looked finished with silence. "You believe I have given nothing," she said softly, because you never look correctly. Value does not disappear when ignored. It simply waits until it is required. The room grew uncomfortable. Her words were not defensive. They were prophetic. She continued, "You are searching for help in every direction except the one standing right in front of you. Pride is a blindfold, and you have worn it so tightly that you cannot recognize your own rescue." The sister-in-law scoffed loudly. "Rescue? From you?" Amara turned to her slowly. "Yes, but it is not time yet. Not until you understand the difference between disrespect and discernment." She then looked at Daniel, directly, for the first time during the confrontation. "When you are truly ready to solve this crisis, you will know where to knock." And with that, she walked out of the room silently. No raised voice, no tears, no shock, just dignity, a shift in the air. After she left, the aunt turned to the family quietly. "You people may be sitting beside a door you refuse to open." Those words lingered, because for the first time, someone from outside had confirmed what they refused to see. The foundation of their pride was beginning to crack. And soon, very soon, they would learn who Amara truly was. The next morning, the house felt different, not calmer, but heavier. No one spoke about what happened the previous day, but everyone felt it. Something had shifted. Even Daniel's mother avoided Amara's path, not out of respect, but discomfort. She could no longer treat her like furniture. Something about Amara's calmness unsettled her. Daniel begins to see. For the first time since their marriage, Daniel watched his wife closely, not just with his eyes, but with awareness. He noticed things he had never paid attention to. She never panicked. She never reacted emotionally. She listened more than she spoke. But when she spoke, her words landed like anchors. He remembered her question from episode 5. "If I had the ability to help, would you actually listen to me?" That question kept echoing in his head. All his life, Daniel had believed leadership meant strength. But now he was beginning to realize leadership also required humility. And humility was something Amara had quietly mastered. The crisis goes public. What the family feared the most finally happened. News of the company's financial trouble leaked outside. An online business paper published a short article hinting that their firm was unstable and losing investor confidence. Calls started coming in, not from partners, but from people curious if the family had finally fallen. Reputation was now at risk. Not just money, status. That night, Daniel sat alone in the study, his head in his hands. He didn't notice Amara, standing quietly by the door. After a moment, she spoke softly. It is harder to hide a sinking ship than to repair it. Daniel looked up. For the first time, he didn't respond defensively. "Amara, if you know something, teach me. Please." His voice was tired, not of her, but of fighting the wrong battles. She stepped closer, but not too close. "I will help you," she said, "but understand this first. I am not stepping in as your wife. I am stepping in as someone who knows what she is doing. If I help, I will not operate under silence again." Daniel nodded, slowly, absorbing the meaning. "Then tell me what you need from me." She studied him for a long moment, measuring his sincerity. "Truth," she said. "Not the version your family wants to show the world. The real numbers, the real mistakes, the real books." He hesitated. "That information is confidential." She raised her eyebrow, gently but firmly. "Confidential from who? Your enemies or your solution?" A long silence followed. Then Daniel exhaled. The war inside him, between pride and reality, was ending. "I will get you everything by tomorrow," he said quietly. She nodded once, a silent agreement. Meanwhile, behind their backs, while Daniel was beginning to open his eyes, his mother and sister were in the sitting room, whispering angrily. "So now she thinks she is important? She is pretending. She wants attention. She will embarrass the family if Daniel listens to her." They had no idea. The woman they were slandering was the only chance left. Their pride was still loud, but the storm was louder, because soon the truth would not just knock at their door. It would walk in, The next morning, Daniel came to Amara's room with a brown envelope, thick, sealed, and heavy. Inside it were the full company documents, financial records, investor agreements, debt schedules, board reports, everything. For the first time in the company's history, someone outside the family was being trusted with the truth, except Amara was not someone outside. She was the one they never bothered to see. Daniel hesitated before handing it to her. "I will give you this," he said quietly, "but before I do, I need to ask something." She looked at him, waiting. "Who are you really, Amara?" It wasn't suspicion. It wasn't accusation. It was awakening. She studied him for a moment. He had moved from arrogance, confusion, humility. So she finally answered him. Not fully, but enough to shift the ground beneath his feet. "Before I became your wife, I was not living the life your family imagines. I walked away from a life of influence, not because I lacked ability, but because I grew tired of being valued only for what I could offer." Daniel's eyes widened slightly. She continued, "Sometimes people choose silence, not because they are weak, but because they are observing who deserves their voice." He swallowed slowly. He didn't press further, not yet. He handed her the envelope. Her first move. Amara took the documents to the study and spread them out on the large wooden desk. She scanned through them quietly, page after page. Her face did not change. No sign of panic, no confusion, no hesitation. She moved like someone experienced, analytical, deliberate, sharp. Every misplaced figure she noticed, every gap in accountability she caught, every oversight she marked. Hours passed. She didn't ask for help. She didn't ask for water. She didn't complain. Meanwhile, in the sitting room, Daniel's mother scoffed. Let her pretend. She will soon be tired. But Daniel, for the first time, did not agree with his mother. He watched from a distance. The way Amara carried herself, the certainty in her actions. This was not pretense. The turning moment. By evening, she came out of the study holding only 3 pages. Just 3. From the large stack. She placed them in front of Daniel. "This is where your company's downfall began." He looked confused. "Just 3 pages?" She nodded. "One mistake repeated 3 different ways is enough to collapse any business." Daniel stared at her. This was no guesswork. This was expertise. He sat forward slowly. "Can you fix it?" She looked him in the eyes, calm, steady. "Yes, but before I fix a company, I must fix the mindset guiding it. Otherwise, any solution I bring will be destroyed by the same pride that created this mess." That was the moment Daniel finally understood. He hadn't married a quiet woman. He had married a strategist living undercover. The reveal had begun, but the rest of the family? They were still mocking what they did not understand. Soon, they would learn the difference between a liability and a lifeline. The next morning, Amara requested something no one expected. "I need access to the last 5 years of board decisions." Daniel was surprised, but he agreed immediately. He had reached a point where trust was no longer optional. It was necessary. When he informed the family that Amara would be reviewing the company's internal structure, all hell broke loose. The family's resistance. His mother stood up in outrage. "What nonsense is this? You want to hand the future of this family to her? A woman who has not brought a single investor? Someone whose own family background we don't even know?" The sister-in-law added, "If the company fails now, she will be the one blamed. Who even respect her advice?" Daniel spoke, slowly, firmly for the first time. "We've been doing it your way all this time, and look where we are now. So let us try our way." Silence dropped. This was the first time he chose Amara over his mother. It shook the room. The mother-in-law scoffed loudly. "You will regret this." Amara said nothing. She didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She simply returned to the study and continued her work. Because truth doesn't need noise, only time. The first result. 2 days later, Amara called Daniel privately and handed him a document. "Send this report to the board meeting tomorrow. Do not mention my name yet." Daniel looked at the document. It contained a recovery plan, a debt restructure strategy, a negotiation pathway for investor reentry, and a new credibility framework. Not wishful thinking. A real corporate strategy. Daniel was stunned. Where did you learn this? Amara looked at him, calm as ever. I didn't learn it. I built it. That sentence alone made him realize. This wasn't guessing. This was expertise. The board meeting. The next day, Daniel took the plan to the board. At first, they dismissed it, but when they actually read it, the room shifted. The chairman leaned back slowly. Who wrote this? Daniel paused, then said, a consultant. He wasn't ready to reveal her yet. Not until pride had been fully broken. The board deliberated for over an hour, and then something happened no one expected. They approved the plan unanimously. They instructed Daniel to immediately begin implementation, and one senior board member even said, whoever wrote this has rescued us from collapse. This is not amateur work. The cracks widened. Daniel returned home with a different look in his eyes. Not panic, but relief. His mother rushed to him. Did they remove you? He shook his head. No. They approved the recovery plan. The family gasped. The mother-in-law's relief quickly turned to arrogance. So finally things are working, because we handled it. Amara just watched them quietly. They were celebrating a door they still didn't know she opened. But the truth was now too big to hide for long. Like sunrise creeping under a door, light was already entering their blindness. The next board meeting was scheduled for the following week, the most critical one yet. The board wanted to meet the consultant behind the recovery plan. Daniel knew there was no more delaying. The truth had come out. But before that day arrived, pride would receive its final warning. The night before the reveal, the family sat together celebrating their success, laughing as if they had solved the crisis by themselves. Daniel's mother said proudly, now that the board trusts us again, we will show them we still have influence. Our family name still carries power. Amara passed by quietly with a tray. The mother-in-law looked at her and scoffed. You see, when real work is happening, some people should simply step aside. No one noticed Daniel watching, not in anger anymore, but in shame. He now understood the depth of their blindness. He cleared his throat. The board has asked to meet the consultant in person tomorrow. The family's eyes lit up. His sister clapped her hands. Perfect. We will show them we hire the best. We should look grand for that meeting. The mother-in-law smiled. Yes, someone important, someone powerful must stand beside us. Amara looked at them, quiet, steady. Daniel exhaled slowly. They had no idea. The reveal. The next morning, they arrived at the boardroom. The chairman entered and said, before we begin, can we meet the strategist behind the recovery proposal? Daniel stood up. She is here. His mother-in-law looked around, confused. Where? Which consultant? Daniel turned and extended his hand toward Amara. My wife. For a long moment, nobody moved. Confusion. Shock. Disbelief. His mother's face drained of expression. What did you just say? But before she could continue, the chairman, who already knew the truth from Daniel earlier that morning, smiled and rose to greet Amara. He shook her hand respectfully. Madam, on behalf of the company, we thank you. Your strategy saved us from collapse. The board clapped. The family was frozen. This was no rumor. This was official acknowledgement. The chairman continued. With your permission, the board would like to appoint you as special strategic advisor until the company stabilizes fully. The mother-in-law felt her chest tighten. The same woman, she said, brought nothing, had just become the most valuable person in the room. After the meeting, in the hallway afterward, the family stood speechless. For the first time since her marriage, Amara was the one everyone was looking up to, literally and symbolically. The mother-in-law tried to speak, but the words fumbled. You never told us who you were. Amara turned to her calmly. You never asked. No anger, just truth. She continued softly. The lesson. Respect is not something you give after a person proves their worth. It is something you give because you recognize they have worth, whether you see their abilities or not. Silence. The sister-in-law, lowered her eyes. Daniel's mother swallowed hard, her voice shaking. "We misjudge you. I misjudge you." Amara nodded, not boastfully, not vengefully, just wisely. "Humility is not weakness," she said, "but pride is blindness. The people we dismiss today may be the very people our future depends on tomorrow." Closure. That evening, for the first time, Amara did not stand to serve the family dinner. They served her, not because she demanded it, but because dignity finally took its rightful seat. The storm had not destroyed her. It uncovered her. She did not shout. She did not beg. She did not prove herself early. She waited until the right moment, when truth would speak louder than pride. And it did, because when a foundation is weak, arrogance collapses it. But when a foundation is strong, humility restores it. Never underestimate a quiet person. Sometimes, the person you look down on is the same person God placed in your life to lift you up. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful and emotional lessons about life, respect, and dignity. Leave a comment below what you learned, and remember, never underestimate a quiet person.